Okay, good evening. Happy Friday to everybody. My name is Mahama. I work with Sherry Wang at Springlight. So thank you for taking your time off this busy day to join us. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have any questions for me as Dr. Richardson and I speak, send it in the chat, please. Either I or Dr. Richardson would answer your question. You can send it to everyone if you choose to. You can just send it to me privately as well. All right. So my name is Mahama, and yes, I think Sherry just joined us. Let me see if Sherry has a few words before we start. Welcome, Sherry. Sherry, we are ready to start. I'm wondering if you have a few words to say before we get going. Sherry, can you hear me? I think Sherry is still trying to make her system work. Okay, so we would like to introduce ourselves and then we'll go ahead and start the session for today.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Janae Richardson. I was born and raised in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. And then in 2007, I moved to New York, Syracuse, New York, to complete my undergraduate degree in psychology and magazine journalism. So I graduated from Syracuse in 2011. And for a few years after, I worked at a group home for adults with severe mental illnesses. And that was a very transformative life experience for me, to the point that I actually applied to grad school for clinical psychology. And so I attended Long Island University Post, where I just graduated last year with my degree in clinical psychology. And I've had a lot of experience working with individuals with severe mental illnesses, such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. So in a lot of the work that I've done, I've been able to really teach individuals how to cope with stress. And I hope to really be able to share with you some of those techniques today. Currently, I am working as a postdoc at the VA, or Veterans Affairs Hospital, here in Palo Alto. And I just want to make clear that any of the views that I express today are not representative of the VA at large, but are my own personal views. At the VA, I work with veterans or individuals with severe mental illnesses, teaching them skills to cope. So great to meet all of you, and I'm very excited to speak with you today about stress.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Richardson. I'm happy to be doing this with you because you're the domain expert. My name is Mahama Yankamau. Just call me Mahama. I come to this work from a lot of personal struggles myself. I was diagnosed with clinical depression a few years ago, and I guess had anxiety and stress a lot of my own life. And in trying to figure out how to solve my own problems, I learned the hard way. And I founded a company called Breakthrough Paths that does a lot of work on well-being with leaders and executives. So my background is in engineering originally, but I've spent more than 10 years tutoring and counseling students literally from around the world. I also do a lot of work on emotional intelligence and issues related to stress. Okay, so let's move. It's been proven that movement is one of the best ways to get yourself to transition from one thing that you're doing to another thing. So I want to invite you, if you are willing and able, to just get some stretching in right now. Okay? Feel free to stretch anyhow that you are comfortable with stretching. I know my video is off, but I like to stretch by moving my hands up and down. I like to take space as well when I stretch. And this just helps get the blood moving. So any kind of stretching that you would do that would help you would work as well. So shaking of the hands, This is just to get us set and prepared for our interactive workshop today. So today we are basically going to do a lot of interactive work that would give you practical tools to be able to deal with any challenging situations that may be happening in your life. Okay, so just as part of the movement, one common movement is just circles. I'm doing clockwise and anti-clockwise circles, neck rolls as well. Whatever movement that you do that works for you is fine. Why should we move, or why do we want to move? So the scientific literature has lots of information on the power of movement. So when I say move, I don't just mean exercise. It could be dance, it could be walk, it could just be a 3-minute thing that you do. Okay, people who move have demonstrated greater satisfaction in their lives. Okay, it is also known that regular movement improves our relationships with our friends and family, and that for people who are active, stressful events have a lesser toll on their well-being. So that's a good reason to move. And since quite a few of our audience may be young people, uh, this might be of interest to you that teenagers who are bullied have a 23% reduced risk of attempting suicide if they are active. And that in my mind is significant. And this is from the CDC National Youth Risk Behavior Survey. I thought that was powerful. And also for people with depressive tendencies or depression, I'm talking about young people here, movement is one of the effective ways of reducing the impacts of depression. So I'm sure this is not news to you. As we continue to build up, one thing that we thought we would talk about a little bit today was that stress is not all bad. I don't speak Chinese, but I read somewhere that the Chinese word for crisis or stress has two parts to it. One of them is danger, and the other one is opportunity. So, yes, stress can be harmful, as we were about to see, but stress can also have a positive aspect to it. So, this curve that we see here shows the impact of stress at different levels. Okay? So too little stress, believe it or not, is not good for you either. So that is a state of apathy, it's a state of boredom, of inattention. And too much stress is not good for you either. It is the place of impairment, burnout, disorganization. So there is a space between the two that Greeks call good stress. The word EU stress stands for good stress. So stress that can result in focused attention, emotional balance. In fact, I show here some of our research that talks about the benefits of this type of stress that's called U stress or good stress. Many professional athletes and people who do high performance activities report that before they start their activity, they feel some type of stress. Now, this is not that type of stress that is necessarily harmful, because that stress helps them to increase their focus and performance. It feels exciting and it energizes them. So these are some of the positive benefits of stress, and we don't want to see stress as a boogie person that we have to avoid, because some of it is natural and some of it is indeed very helpful. So going forward, Dr. Richardson will talk to us a little bit about stress, negative stress, and that's probably what we'll focus the most on today, because that's what people ask a lot for. So,
As Muhammad just discussed, there's some stress that are very beneficial, can help to motivate us to get things done. At the same time, there's some stress that starts to take a toll on us, both mentally as well as physically. And so we really want to think about stress moving forward as it can become really negative and have a difficult impact on us. if we think that we can't cope with the demands of a particular situation. So many of us, we're facing this current pandemic, and the idea is that if we don't believe that we can cope with this situation, or whether the situation be taking a test or giving a presentation, that actually can take a toll on us over time. All right, so imagine you are this zebra being chased by this lion. Imagine how you'd feel. Probably feel pretty terrified, and you'd be within reason to feel that way. As humans, we have a natural response that happens in our bodies when there's a life-threatening situation. This response is called the fight, flight, or freeze response. And so what happens when we face something that's life-threatening, such as in the picture, is there's signals sent from our brain to the rest of our body that makes our heart rate speed up. Maybe our palms start getting sweaty, our muscles get really tense. And this really helps us to either respond by maybe running away, shutting down, or fighting back. The challenge becomes that oftentimes in day-to-day life, we start to view things that are not life-threatening as life-threatening threats. And I'll give examples. So maybe giving a presentation or taking a test, some of those examples. And so those things actually can trigger this response. And what can happen over time if we're not careful is that this fight, flight, or freeze response can be triggered day and day and day again. And what research shows is that over time, once this response continues to be triggered, it can actually impact us physically as well as mentally. And we'll talk about some of that in a moment. So there was a study done by the American Institute of Stress about 5 years ago. And what we really want to highlight here is they surveyed people living across the United States, and they found that about 75% of people said that stress had an impact on their mental and physical health. And as a result of that, it really becomes important for us to look at ways to figure out how to manage stress effectively so that it doesn't have some of these negative impacts on us. What you see here is some research that points out some of the common stressors that people might face. A stressor is anything that causes stress. And so we'd like for you to take a moment to really read through the list, just looking at the list of stressors. And perhaps you might notice that, pandemics or disasters are on this list. And again, this is something that many of us are facing, all of us really, and might be causing a lot of stress for people, right? There are also other types of stressors, such as maybe having some relationship problems, so maybe issues with family or with friends, perhaps issues with school, or stress might be maybe you're not in school right now, you have to do school at home, and that can be really upsetting and frustrating for you. Maybe you're not able to see your friends as well. And so the list goes on, but we just wanted to highlight to you what some common stressors could be. What we have here are a list of signs of how stress might be impacting you in terms of how it's impacting your body. Those would be the physical signs, and how stress is impacting you psychologically, or how it's affecting your mental health. And so in terms of physical signs on the left, there are many examples here, but we want to highlight a few perhaps that are common. So maybe having muscle tension, so maybe your neck feels stiff, that might be a sign of being stressed out. Maybe you're having some difficulty sleeping, it can also be a sign that you're stressed out as well. Or maybe feeling overly tired or fatigued, that can also be a sign of stress. There are also some less common signs, physical signs of stress as well. So one might be maybe breaking out in rashes or hives, can be an example of stress. as well as maybe having some gastrointestinal problems such as heartburn if you eat something spicy, or feeling as though you need to throw up after eating, or having trouble going to the bathroom. Those can all be physical signs. And in terms of psychological signs on the right, we see a few. I'd like to point out maybe a few of them, including maybe having difficulty in terms of feeling overwhelmed all the time, or maybe you're having difficulty concentrating. Your mind feels like it's racing all the time and it's hard to slow it down. Perhaps feeling a little bit more irritable or angry more so than usual. And also a little bit sad. They can also be a sign of being stressed out as well.
So what we wanted to highlight here are some techniques for managing the stress that you probably are familiar with already. We have some exercises that we're going to do together as a group tonight that you might find useful. But there are 9 techniques that we find very useful. Uh, what we call the joy of movement is exercise and dance, and then gratitude is just being consciously aware of what is working well in your life. Okay? Then human connection, obviously, this is reasonable to expect that the better your human relationships are, the more you can see other people as allies and not enemies, then the better you would feel about yourself. We'll talk a little bit about mindfulness. We have an exercise on that. We have an exercise on how progressive muscle relaxation could help you, how you could use cognitive reframing. Like I said, some of them are common sense, like good sleep habits, learning to be kind to yourself, which is what self compassion is, and then a very interesting method called the cookie jar method that you could apply to deal with stress. So, obviously, some of these you know already, and what we invite you to in the chat add some other techniques that you use for stress management that may not be included in what we have included. We started by talking about movement when I had us do some hand rolls and neck rolls. What are some ideas of movement you have? You can see this woman in the gym, people in a dance class, basketball in the park, running, baseball. Basically, anything that can get your heart racing, anything that can help you forget about what is in your head is a good way to deal with stress. There's a really good book by Kelly McGonigal, who is a clinical psychologist like Dr. Richardson, called The Joy of Movement. And it talks about all the scientific evidence that regular movement is a very powerful way to build resilience against stress. So, this is just to emphasize something you know already.
Mindfulness might not be a new concept for many people. Many think about meditation, um, with Buddhist traditions. But what we'd like for you to think about is, and I often tell this to people, far so often our minds are so distracted by maybe things that happened in the past that we regret, or maybe we're pretty worried about the future. And all those things are going on that it's really hard for us to be fully here in the present moment. We often feel like our mind is just either in yesterday or tomorrow. Or maybe, we're sitting and watching TV, but we're not fully paying attention because we're on our cell phones or on our computer at the same time, and maybe you're talking to someone else. And so what mindfulness really is the practice of helping you to develop better awareness and a better ability to control your focus and attention. And really focusing your attention on a task that you're doing in the present moment as you're letting go of some of those distractions. So letting go of some of those worries or concerns or physical sensations or judgments you may have toward yourself, judgments like I am stupid, or judgments to what other people, such as my friend is a terrible person. Mindfulness is a way to help us notice and become aware of those types of thoughts, but also help us to gently let go of those things as well. And this process really of being able to notice our thoughts without being like clinging to them or even being overwhelmed by them actually can be really helpful for helping us to reduce stress. And so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to do a quick mindfulness practice so that you can get a sense of what mindfulness looks like, right? So often when I teach mindfulness, I encourage people to try to sit in an upright position. So your feet planted on the floor. So if your legs are crossed, uncross them for this. And you can have your palms on your lap. And you can keep your eyes open if you'd wish. People often prefer to close their eyes, but do whatever's comfortable for you. If you do keep your eyes open, though, try to keep your eyes focused on an area in front of you that's not going to be distracting. So as your body settles, and as your eyes close, if you're going to close them, bring your awareness to your breathing. Notice the breath coming in and the breath going out. Follow the breath with your awareness. Follow the breath all the way in and follow the breath all the way out. Not trying to change it in any way. Just breathe in and breathe out. And as you breathe in again, feeling the breath as it passes through your nostrils, and breathing out, feeling the breath as it leaves through your nostrils. Keeping your awareness lightly and gently on your breath, breathing mindfully in the present moment. And if thoughts come in as you do this exercise, as they always do, acknowledge the thoughts without judgment and let them go. Let them drift away like clouds floating across the sky, and bring your awareness back to your breath, back to your breathing, back to the present moment. Each time your attention moves away from your breath, distracted by a thought about something you have to remember to do perhaps, or maybe something that's bothering you or worrying you, notice the thought, acknowledge it, and then let it go. Bringing your attention back to your breath, back to the present moment. Letting your awareness be on your breath as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Noticing the familiar rhythm of your breath. And continue to mindfully breathe this way for a little longer, taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Breathing in again, noticing the brief pause as you begin to breathe out, aware of the steady, familiar rhythm of your breath. And whenever you're ready, slowly bring your attention back to the room, aware of your body in the chair, and opening your eyes whenever you're ready.
That's really powerful. Thank you for leading us through that.
Mhm.
If you have any comments in the chat, please send it to us. I feel relaxed when I go through these types of exercises.
Mhm. And this is a brief exercise that you can do on your own. So we're really teaching you techniques and exercises that we really hope that you all can take with you and use on your own in moments when you feel overwhelmed, you feel stressed, you feel tense. Okay, so we just talked about mindfulness as one way of building awareness of how you're feeling. Another strategy to help you cope with stress is called progressive muscle relaxation. And what progressive muscle relaxation is a technique that helps us to notice where the tension is in our body and be able to release it. And the reason why this is important is because when we are stressed out, we tend to hold that tension in our body. I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed out, I tend to have tension in my neck. And so progressive muscle relaxation is really a strategy to help you notice where that tension is And through a series of exercises where you're tensing and you're releasing the muscles, help you to release that tension. We talked a little bit earlier about that fight, flight, or freeze response that gets activated when we see a threat. What progressive muscle relaxation does instead is it actually helps to turn on the opposite response in our body, which is the relaxation response. So progressive muscle relaxation is a way that we can actually calm our bodies down. It's progressive because we do one muscle group at a time. So often, we'll start with head and we'll go all the way down to the feet, as you can see here in this photo that we have on the screen. Another thing I'll point out is that if you have pain in any area of your body, you can feel free to omit that step. The idea here is that we don't want to cause you any additional pain or harm. We're going to do a progressive muscle exercise just a moment so you can get a sense of how it feels. But as we're going through it, if you have any pain in that area, feel free to omit that step, and perhaps maybe instead you could just imagine yourself instead tensing and relaxing that particular muscle. Okay. And then as we're talking about tensing, the goal here is not to strain yourself as you're, tensing. So we want to make that clear too. Just tense enough so that you can feel some of the tension, but without causing an unnecessary strain on your body. Okay. Now we're going to do a very brief progressive muscle relaxation exercise for the sake of time. If you do this on your own, it can take a little bit longer, and that's fine too. But we just want you to get a sense of what progressive muscle relaxation can look and feel like. All right. Okay, so again, sitting upright in your chair, allow your attention to focus on your body. If you begin to find your mind wandering, bring it back to the muscle you're working on. Okay, so take a deep breath through your abdomen and hold that for a few seconds. And then now exhale slowly. All right, again, take a deep breath in. And as you're breathing, notice your stomach rising and your lungs filling with air. Okay. And as you exhale, imagine the tension that's being released from your body, flowing out of your body. Continue to practice that for just a moment, breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Right? Let's begin. So let's start by having you tighten the muscles in your forehead by raising your eyebrows as high as you can. So you're going to hold that for several seconds. So continue to hold it. Hold. Okay. And now release. Just feeling that tension just fall away from your eye area. And continue to breathe in and out. Take another deep breath in and out. Now, I'd like for you to smile widely, feeling your mouth and cheeks tense. So hold that position for several more seconds. Continue to hold. And now release, just appreciating the softness of your face. That tension just falls away. Now, if you don't have any pain in this area, gently pull your head back as if you're going to look at the ceiling. Okay? So we're going to hold that position for several seconds. So continue to hold it. Hold it a little bit longer. And now release, feeling that tension just melt away from your neck as you bring your head back into the upright position. Now, tightly, but without straining, clench your fist, okay? So as though you were squeezing a lemon, and hold this position until I say stop. All right, so again, we're clenching our fist. And continue to hold. Hold some more. And now release. Feeling that tension just fall away as you just let go of the tension in your hands. Now, tighten your thighs by pressing your knees together as if you were trying to hold a penny between them. So let's hold this position a little bit longer. And just a little bit more. Now release. Just feeling that tension just fall away. And now finally, bring your attention to your feet. And flex your feet by pulling your toes towards you and feeling the tension in your calves. Okay? So hold that for a little bit longer. Hold that tension there. A little bit more. And now let go as you relax, feeling the weight of your legs sinking down. Now imagine a wave of relaxation slowly spreading through your body, beginning at your head and going all the way down to your feet. Feel the weight of your relaxed body as you breathe in and out. All right, all done. Good job.
Yeah, that was very relaxing. I was like, I haven't tested my hands like that in a while. Thank you for that. That's something that I haven't been doing that I would actually like to incorporate into my own practice.
Yeah. I've done this before with lots of clients, and I often get that response of them saying that they feel a lot more relaxed after. And again, progressive muscle relaxation can go for a little bit longer than we just did. For purposes of demonstration, it was a little bit shorter this time, but you can feel free to, do every muscle group that we didn't get to. Okay.
Right.
Now, good sleep habits. All right. Now, this is an important one for myself included because I am someone that stays up pretty late, but I will be giving you some advice about sleep today. And the reason why it's important to talk about sleep is because if we're not getting enough sleep, that actually can put a lot of stress on our bodies, and that can impact how we're feeling emotionally, as well as how we're feeling physically. So just imagine, not having a good night's rest and how you might feel the next day. And so we just have a few tips that we want to highlight that can help you to improve the way that you're sleeping. One is to make sure that you have a very good wind-down routine before going to bed. So for example, we just did progressive muscle relaxation. That can be something that you do maybe in a half hour or hour before you get ready for bed, or maybe you might color or read. What this does is it helps to calm and soothe our bodies and gets our minds in the place of being ready for going to sleep. It's also important next to try to have a consistent sleep schedule. So making sure that you're going to sleep and waking up at the same time every day. So this is actually really important because often what happens is we might go to sleep same time, get up the same time during the week, but then the weekends we sort of sleep in. And what that does is it throws our sleep cycle off. So really trying to go to bed, waking at the same time, Sunday through Saturday, so every day of the week, okay? Also, just want to point out that it's important to use your bed only for sleeping. And so often what happens is we're doing all sorts of things in our bed. We're watching TV, we are on the computer, we're using our phones. And so we start to associate our bed with so many other things. And then when we're not able to sleep, then that becomes really difficult for us because our mind has already associated the bed with all sorts of other things other than sleeping. So once we're able to focus on our bed being the only place that we go to for sleep, then that actually can trick the mind into really being able to go to get ready for bed at night. Just a couple other things that are important to point out. If you're going to nap during the day, trying to maybe limit your naps to about 30 minutes and trying to maybe nap by 3 p.m. each day. And that's really important because the later we nap, it throws off that sleep cycle again and can make it really hard for you to go to sleep at night. And then if you have difficulty going to bed at night, maybe you lie down and you have difficulty falling asleep, what I often tell people is it's really important. Maybe if you've been in bed for about 20 minutes and you haven't fallen asleep, to get up and actually go to a different room or a different part of your room where maybe you might do a calm exercise such as reading or something that's not too thought-provoking. But the idea being, again, that we only want to keep the bed someplace where we're sleeping. So if we're not able to sleep, getting out of bed, right? And that also means, if you're lying in bed, can't fall asleep at night, not looking at the clock. So looking at your phone or anything like that, because that actually can raise your anxiety, which can make it more difficult to go to sleep. So just a few tips to improve your sleep habits.
I'll take your advice on limiting naps to 30 minutes earlier in the
Oh, that one is hard for me, I will say that.
day.
All right. So with cognitive reframing, at the very beginning of this presentation, one of the things that I pointed out is that often stress becomes unhelpful for us because of our belief that we can't cope with or manage in a particular situation. And so from that standpoint, it becomes really important then for us to reframe the way that we're thinking about stress and the way that we're thinking about situations. And so in a form of treatment that is called cognitive behavioral therapy, I really teach my clients that it's not the situation itself that leads people to feel or behave in a particular way. Rather, it's the way that they think about a situation that then leads them to feel or respond in a particular manner. And so we're going to apply this to an example so that it becomes a little bit clearer for you. All right. So looking at the top example under before reframing, let's say the situation for you, especially, if you're in school, maybe having a lot of work to do. Okay, so that's the situation. And so the idea here is that the huge workload isn't necessarily what will lead you to feel stress or maybe lead you to yell at your brother or your mom or anything like that. Rather, it's your belief that you can't handle the huge workload. So then the belief here becomes very important to target and to try to tweak just a little bit. And so what we see is once we're able to reframe things, so instead of maybe telling yourself, I can't handle this, but instead I can do this, then that actually can lead you to feel calmer and be able to tackle your work. And so the idea here is that we do have control over the way we think about situations. And it's really important for us to be mindful of how we're thinking about situations and trying to reframe as much as possible, because that can actually have a positive impact on our moods as well as our physical health. Okay. And lastly, a topic that is very near and dear to my heart is the topic of self-compassion, or as Mahalo was pointing out a little bit earlier, really the idea of extending the same kindness to ourselves that we would extend to other people. And so a psychologist by the name of Kristen Neff really thought that self-compassion had a few different components to it. The first component being mindfulness, which is really, again, the idea of us being able to notice how hard we're being on ourselves and perhaps how that's making us feel. So if we're having, critical thoughts like, I'm such a failure because I wasn't able to get this assignment done or because this friendship ended. Mindfulness helps us to be really aware of those types of thoughts, but then it helps us to be able to create some distance between those thoughts as we're able to notice them and gently let them go, similar to the exercise that we just practiced not too long ago. So that's the mindfulness piece. The self-kindness piece is really treating yourself in the same way you might treat a friend who's going through perhaps something similar that you're going through. And so, using a really silly example, let's say you have a friend that slipped and fell because there was, a spill in the house and they didn't see the spill. And now they're beating themselves up and saying, I'm so foolish, like I should have known. More often than not, we're going to encourage this friend and say, well, you know what? Actually, no, you didn't see the spill. Like, it's understandable that you would have slipped and fallen. We would be kind to that other person, to that friend. Can we be kind to ourselves in the same way? And so a huge part of self-kindness is just to imagine what advice you might tell to a friend who's going through a similar situation. Okay. And then lastly, the idea of common humanity is that everyone in life faces challenges and suffering. And I think that that's particularly relevant now as we face this pandemic that has really just spread across the world. And people across the US are facing challenges, whether it's financial, challenges with maybe not high school students not being able to graduate and so on. And so the idea of common humanity is that often we can feel alone in our struggles and our suffering. But the idea of common humanity is that we're actually connected to humanity and to other people because everyone experiences suffering and so that we're not alone. And that can actually be a pretty powerful thing to tell ourselves and remind ourselves of. And so Muhammad now is going to transition us to an exercise that we can do to help us practice some self-compassion.
Yes. So you're going to see that my screen probably switched, and I hope you can see the screen now. There's a short video that I want to show, and this is a practical way to apply self-compassion. So just hold on. It's an 8-minute video, but I'll cut it off after 5 minutes. And after the video, we're going to do an exercise where each of us is going to create a proverbial cookie jar. In fact, I taught this earlier today, and somebody told me she was going to get a jar and put her cookies inside. So let's see what you do with this, right? So I'm going to play it. It's a YouTube video.
Let's be real. Life is full of struggles. You might be failing a class, your job might be stressful, you might have relationship problems, or it could simply be that you're not improving as fast as you'd like. I know how hard it can be to keep the motivation to persevere. Our minds simply don't want us to be in an uncomfortable situation. That's why we give up and shy away from it. But even when our minds are telling us that we should call it a day, we usually have more fuel left in the tank. We just have to tap into this fuel. So what can you do to keep on going? How can you push past that mental resistance? The solution is the cookie jar. The cookie jar was created by a guy called David Goggins. Goggins is a retired Navy SEAL who has competed in more than 60 ultra marathons, triathlons, and ultra triathlons, all while also setting new course records and regularly placing in the top 5. Furthermore, he's a former Guinness World Record holder for completing over 4,000 pull-ups in 17 hours. He's known to be one of the toughest men alive. He used his cookie jar to fuel all of these achievements and continues to use it to fuel his new successes to this very day. Before I explain how to use it, let me tell you the story of how the cookie jar method was created. Goggins wanted to raise money for Special Operations Warrior Foundation. It's a non-profit organization founded to provide scholarships to the surviving children of the Special Ops soldiers killed in the line of duty. To spread awareness and raise that money, he vowed to run Badwater 135. However, Badwater is the world's toughest foot race and not everyone is able to enter. You have to earn your spot and requirements are sky high. One of them is to have multiple 100-mile races completed. So Goggins went on to sign up for a race where you run for 24 hours straight, the goal being to run 100 miles to qualify for Badwater. And if you didn't know, 100 miles is basically 4 marathons in one go. Goggins looked fit from all his SEAL training, but he was no runner. At least not at the time. In fact, he hadn't run more than a mile in the 6 months prior. Another problem was that the race was in 3 days, so he had zero preparation and training. However, he decided to go on with it anyway. For the first few miles of the race, he felt fine and had no trouble running. But around 25 miles in, he started questioning himself. Can he actually do this? He was feeling tired and he basically had 3 more marathons left to run. But he kept on going. At mile 50, his thighs felt like they were loaded with lead. Each subtle rotation of the ankle felt like shock therapy. Still, he ran. Not fast and not with much style, but he kept on going. Then at mile 70, he couldn't take another step forward. Exhausted from running 70 miles with no training, he sat down to rest. He saw that there was bloody urine dripping down his leg, mixed with diarrhea. He was feeling beat down and it was one of the lowest points of his life. He kept on asking himself, why? Why are you still doing this to yourself? Why did he keep on going when he should have quit 5 hours ago? He then remembered this wasn't the first time he'd taken on an impossible task. and he suddenly felt some energy build up. He started walking slowly, step by step. He kept on digging in his past while remembering all his previous victories. He tapped in the emotional state that he felt during those victories and got the energy he needed to keep on going. His feet were still a bloody mess, full of blisters, but it gave him just enough drive to sustain him until the 100-mile mark. And that's what the cookie jar is. All your past achievements and failures that you overcame. Now, you might not be interested in running an ultra marathon. However, I believe you would like to be able to keep on going even when you feel like giving up. That might mean studying longer even if it's extremely boring. It might mean working on your side business even if you're tired. Or it just might mean going to the gym even if it's raining outside and you don't feel like it. Whatever it is, eventually there comes a point where your mind will tell you to give up and you'll need to push back to get through it. This is where we use our cookie jar and we draw inspiration from our past victories. But first, you need to make the inventory of your cookie jar. So take a piece of paper and write it all out. And don't just write down your achievement list.
Okay.
Include life obstacles you overcame as well, like overcoming your shyness, conquering
So I'm gonna
depression,
stop
or mastering your fear of heights.
the thing
Whatever.
now, and then we're gonna do the
It doesn't have to be a
exercise.
massive.
Awesome. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna share back my original screen, and we're gonna suggest to you to do this exercise if that's something that you're open to doing. And the reason is that I believe strongly that remembering where you've succeeded in life is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself. So here's the exercise that we are doing. Just going back to my original screen, if you can see my screen. So I want to invite you to create your own cookie jar. So for the next 1 minute or so, write down times in your life that things were tough and you were still able to work through them successfully. Or small things that you are proud of it for yourself. Maybe you didn't feel like going to school today and you went anywhere. Maybe you didn't feel like being kind to someone and you went anywhere. So the idea is that all the small acts of kindness, all the challenges that you've been able to overcome, write them down and put them somewhere that you can recover them when you need to. Okay? So it is just your own store of inspiration for yourself. This is part of what Dr. Richardson was saying about self-compassion. Because a lot of us, including you, have overcome things in our lives. Some of the things I dare say are stronger than what we may be going through now. But in a time like this, it's really important that we remember. Because we're running out of time, I'm just going to cut this exercise short, but I invite you to take on the challenge of writing down the things that you've overcome in your life up to this point and keeping them somewhere you can find, maybe in some type of cookie jar or whatever storage device you want to use. So just to wrap up, Dr. Richardson will take us through a quick summary of what we've been talking about today, and we would answer any questions that anybody might have.
We talked about a number of stress management techniques, and I think for the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of them, but really just highlight, again, the importance of movement, as Mahama, pointed out earlier. Really being able to focus our attention in the present moment, becoming more aware of our thoughts, but being able to create some distance between ourselves and those thoughts. Being able to help to calm some of our stress, such as using progressive muscle relaxation, practicing gratitude, right? Making sure that we're having a consistent sleep schedule. So again, having good sleep habits, being kind to ourselves. We just went through the cookie jar method, and I think it's a really powerful thing that we can do when we're able to really bring back to mind the times when we've succeeded, the obstacles that we've overcome, and how using that can be a way to actually practice self-compassion when we're not feeling good. Cognitive reframing, again, really being mindful of the idea that we have control over our thoughts and that we can choose to think new thoughts, for the most part. And so really the idea here is being able to notice perhaps when you're having thoughts that aren't helpful and trying to reframe them in a way that can actually help you to feel a lot better. All right, and just quickly, other strategies include prayer. For some people that works, or whatever type of religious meditation might be helpful for you. Listening to music, watching TV, arts and crafts, maybe reading, as well as journaling.
That's awesome. There's lots of really good techniques.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a buffet. You pick what works for you, and consistency is probably the key to doing it. And we all can do it. Whatever you are already doing that works for you, keep doing it. So we have about 5 more minutes, but we can wait for a few more minutes. If anybody has any question, you can type it in the chat. You could speak up if that's how you prefer to do it, and we are willing to help you if we can answer the question. So, yeah, fire away if you have any questions. Indeed. Yeah, you can send us a private chat question. You can send it to everyone. You can speak up. Okay, and the other thing is that we are willing to share these slides with you. Feel free to take any screenshots of something you find useful. And if you want the slides, you should let Sherry know and we can share the slides with you as well.
Yeah. One quick thing I will say, Mahama, before I forget is, we practice mindfulness. And one thing I really want to point out is that mindfulness, if you practice it on your own, it takes a lot of practice. So if maybe you're trying to do some mindful breathing tomorrow and you feel like, oh my gosh, I suck at this. That's a natural reaction at first. The idea is to just keep practicing over time, and like it's developing a muscle. And really, any of the stress management techniques that we talked today do require practice over time so that they become more automatic in the moment. Perhaps when you're feeling overwhelmed, you're more able to use them in a moment.
Thank you. And I have found that for me, when I sit down, my mind starts to go to 2,000 places. So it's been
Mm-hmm.
to practice mindfulness, but I've had some success. Finally, I just want to leave you with something that really works for me, being an extrovert, which is human connection. For me, when I talk to people, it makes a huge difference for me. I know it's not the same for everybody. And I also struggle with self compassion. So, Dr. Richardson, thank you
Mm-hmm.
for that. I need to work on that for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to thank Springlight and Sherry Wang. I want to thank you for taking time off your busy day to spend time with us for the webinar. And Dr. Richardson, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. And I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful to you and the work that you do.
Thank you for having me. This was an absolute joy, just to be able to share some of the work that I've been able to do in my clinical practice. So thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. And I wish everybody a wonderful day. Have a great weekend and be blessed.